This is the first webinar of the year. The next one is going to be in June. Now the third one's in September, and then World Vasectomy Day this year will be for the month of September. We're just extending it now, and just kind of as things have grown and there's more energy, we just build up the program. We'll be getting out the details on that. Headquarters is going to be Bolivia, and once again, anybody who's interested in a mission anywhere in the world, we're happy to talk about it. We can set things up, and there's always need for trainers in many parts of the world, that's training here in Zambia. Last year, I think they did around 3 vasectomies in the whole country, and those are on humans. I'm going to double check if there are any other, if they got lions or water buffalo, but definitely not a lot of vasectomies here. But I'm going to pass it on to Doug. I wanted to just acknowledge Doug and Michelle and Escar Guarin, Michelle Lebrecq. They're really the ones who put these programs together. That's another opportunity for people. We'd love to have more feedback or more input in terms of ideas for lectures, but this one really came out of Doug's own curiosity. So Doug, take it away.
Jonathan, thank you. I'm Dr. Doug Stein. I practiced general urology until about 2000, when I decided to dedicate myself to trying to prevent unintended human pregnancies through vasectomy. And it's been 22 years of meeting very fascinating people. And starting in 2010, meeting Jonathan, and who got me involved in the whole World Vasectomy Day. He sort of came up with the idea when he and I were traveling around, and he was following me in the process of making a documentary film, and that premiered in Australia, along with the Adelaide Film Festival, which was also the Adelaide Festival of Ideas. And that's when Jonathan's idea came to fruition. So it's been a wonderful foundation for being able to develop new ideas. And the idea we have today is one that has developed over the past few years, again, through meeting very interesting people. And a very interesting person that I met about a year and a half ago was a fellow by the name of Guy Shepherd, who we have here, who is a publisher of a popular website called Planned Man. And Guy had the idea at the time that men should store sperm and get vasectomies, even as a, let's say, long-acting contraceptive. I won't say temporary, but with the idea that stored sperm can be used in the future, and that a man can take hold of his, can get a better grasp on his immediate future by storing sperm and not worrying about unintended pregnancies. That was about 2 years ago, and in fact, Guy came to me for his own vasectomy, which I'll let him tell you about. But the other extremely interesting person that I met was a young man by the name of Parker Olive, who actually registered for a vasectomy at the age of 18 in August of 22. Now, normally we would have sort of just punted on that, because our normal criteria have been that, for some odd reason, 21. Now, why 21? Why does our practice arbitrarily choose 21? Well, in order to get federal assistance for vasectomy, you have to be 21 and of sound mind. That is federal assistance through Title X or Medicaid. And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so somewhat arbitrarily, we have chosen to provide vasectomy services on young men who are at least 21 and are of sound mind. And in fact, over the last years, maybe promoted a little bit by the overturn of Roe versus Wade, we're up to a practice of about 15% of men who are choosing vasectomy before children, and a significant number of them are young, and arbitrarily we say young is under the age of 30. So my associate John and I call men who register for vasectomies when they are child-free and under the age of 30, and we have a long discussion with them about the irreversibility, let's say, of vasectomy, and that this is a choice that warrants careful consideration. Well, so when Parker's registration came in, we always like to give everybody a little time to state his case. And in fact, we've had some young men who had very significant cognitive abnormalities, and the registrations were put in by their parents, or they might have had very strong family histories of heritable conditions that they didn't want to pass on. So we give everybody the chance to chat a little bit with us. And I had a chance to chat with Parker, and he's an amazing young man. And we actually did Parker's vasectomy when he was 18. And I think that when he has a chance to talk to you, he'll be able to explain that. And the third impressive person that I met was a reproductive urologist named Martin Bestuba, who came to visit our office. And he's a very likable fellow and a real expert in sperm storage. He and Mel Cohen run a cryo bank in California. And I didn't really know. Here I'm telling men, oh, you can store sperm. But I don't really know that much about it. I don't know how effective. I don't even know how sperm is stored. I didn't know much until Marty came to visit. And I didn't know how effective it is to use stored sperm 5 years later, 10 years later. So is it effective? Are we sending men down a primrose path and saying, oh, just store sperm and you'll be able to parent children in the future? So I want to let our speakers take over, and we'll start with Guy and why he came up with the idea through Planned Man of letting all the men store sperm and have vasectomies and then have families later on. So Guy, could you take it from here?
Sure. Again, thank you, Doug, for your curiosity, because I remember when I first kind of reached out to you for this, and you were giving me the patient questionnaire, and you're like, you're 55 years old. You don't need one of these things. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I made the argument. I could see that he was playing by a very high code of conduct. So I said, someday, while my wife is menopausal, and I'm 55 years old, I hope someday to be famous like Hugh Hefner with this Planned Man site. So I wanted to protect myself and my future options by getting a vasectomy. One of the things that I think that really kind of moved me to do it was that I think someone has to mute their. Am I the only one hearing that?
No, we're hearing it too.
Yeah. The director can turn off a speaker of someone else, I believe, a participant if they can't get the message that they should turn off their mic.
Yeah, it's probably just someone yelling at their dog or kids. That's how it usually is for me. So one of the things I was very concerned about is that, as a men's magazine, one of the things you really want to do is I didn't want to stand up a Playboy, but I wanted to stand up a magazine that kind of took the idea of men seriously. And one of the things you have to confront is that, there's a serious problem with unintended pregnancy. And I think men have been free riding on women's kind of reproductive sacrifices since the advent of the pill. Sadly, I didn't see anything on the market that would kind of allow for that, so any of the things that I kind of looked into in terms of a male pill, it looked like, if you took this thing, you might not have a child, but you'll probably start looking like Caitlyn Jenner too, right? So there was this kind of moment where I'm like, well, what could be done? And I really did kind of look at the cryogenic stuff, and there are a couple presently, at scale, kind of in the male kind of versions of this. And I'm like, well, what about if we, primarily these are being used by folks like for testicular cancer. What if we started using these instead for, men as young as they can, right? Hell, if I had a kid who was as good as basketball as like a young LeBron James, if I was that boy's mother, I would actually have him do this very young, right? Because it's like, I think this is definitely a problem that kind of, affects particularly young men with options. That if we froze this, if men took harvested their best selves as young as they could, right? That, that we would, and then got a vasectomy, that a lot of these problems of unintended pregnancy would just disappear, right? So, there's 1 million abortions a year. Like, people like Parker's out there, it's like all of a sudden those problems go away. One of my little catchy phrases at the beginning is like, VD maybe, baby never, right? It's that it's like it really does kind of change the way that things go. And so I put this idea out there, and again, I thought it was important for almost like, you know, just like Jonathan did with his own movie. You got to put your own self and your fellows on the line. And I think what we've done is, I think, again, just the fact that we're having this conversation today, you know, is so worth it. And the fact that there's a person like Parker today actually shows the idea. But I really think this is a compliment to your guys' mission. I mean, I think like you guys have taken this, and, you know, and this is kind of a solution to the idea of kind of, you know, overpopulation and stuff. But I think this is kind of an interesting opportunity for really kind of the application of vasectomies to a first world problem, in a sense. Maybe this can kind of, you know, over time, it can become something that can go to, you know, the developing world. But I think that young men are in a circumstance, particularly now, where it's like, you know, the average man is getting probably married later and later in years, like when he's probably 27 or, you know, to 30 now is the new age. And, you know, and he's able to have a kid probably, you know, for 15 years, you know, after he's 15 years old. So there's this huge kind of risk profile that every man carries around with them. And I think if we able to kind of get men to kind of, you know, go and make a donation of themselves, you know, as young as they can. The more I've read into this, it seems like the quality, you know, of sperm is going down yearly. I think there's a global problem with it. But, you know, I think a young man kind of harvesting his best self, freezing his best self, putting it in, you know, in a freezer under lock and key. I think he can go out into the world and actually be, you know, he can pursue his own happiness and be a better citizen of the world if he actually freezes himself and gets a vasectomy. And I very much wanted to go to scale. But one of the things I really did like about it is that, you know, when you go through this process, and you guys, doctors know this, it's like, really, it's not just simple medicine. It's like you really have to reflect on human nature and the nature of the patient that you're dealing with. And this has been a wonderful learning curve about the nature of men and really the importance of women in kind of helping kind of elevate that nature of men. Because one of the things when I walked into Doug's office, who it happens to be behind a McDonald's. So I think one of the first jokes I said, it's like, you know, I don't know how many you've served. They say over 1 billion served. You got about 30,000, but you should have the golden testes above your office door. But the thing that really struck me was that I even asked the guy, like, how many women are actually arranging for these vasectomies for their men? And he turned around and he asked the person who kind of mans the phone bank, and it was over 60%, like anecdotally, right? And then if you kind of like, most men have no relationship with their health, and when it comes time for men's health or generally in reproductive health specifically, and my point is if we could, and I saw this opportunity come with after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you know, women were putting up signs, you know, get vasectomies, right? And I thought at the very beginning when I was looking into this, yeah, well, just reversible vasectomies. That's all we'll do. But the more you looked into that, into the nature of reversible vasectomies, while it's an option, it's not the type of option that I think anybody would really, truly recommend if they were being, you know, a sound advisor and doing their, you know, Hippocratic oath to their patients. But if you put the freezer first, I think it just changes everything. You know, you get better supply. You take the supply problem out of the supply. You know, you take it like my nightmare in life is, I don't know if you know this Nickelodeon star, Nick Cannon. He's had more babies in the past 2 years than anybody. He's like the new Genghis Khan of kids, right? But it's like, that is a problem. And I think if we kind of did this, I think women would be happy, men would be happy, society would benefit. And I think that's, you know, the idea that you guys put this thing together today, right? And again, the weakest part of my link on this is what I knew you could get it out of a freezer, obviously, if you put it in, and you could get it to a gynecologist. But those steps are, you know, I don't know what they are, and I'm excited to be here today and hear about them. And I'm also very excited about Parker. I mean, thank you. It's like I'm going to show this video to my son. Maybe it will actually cure him.
Let's go right to Parker, Guy. Now, for all the vasectomists who are watching this, I know you probably said, oh, Stein, you got to be crazy. You did a vasectomy on an 18-year-old guy. Well, I'd like you to listen to Parker, and I'd like you to think to yourselves, would I have done a vasectomy on this young man? Parker, tell us about yourself.
Thank you for the introduction. Kind of very flattering, actually. So yeah, I'm Parker. I got a vasectomy at 18 years old. I've heard a lot about it myself, heard a lot of feedback from other people. And so my biggest thing is I'm very proud of kind of how I've gotten to where I am. I'm in the 7-year program here at USF. In the 7 years, it's a combined bachelor's of science and degree in medicine. And it's not easy to get here. And so I am very proud of, kind of how I have. But I've realized that all it takes is one mistake. Guy, you kind of mentioned that, you can have a kid anytime after 15. And you're right, after med school and all that, I'm going to be in my 30s. So that's over 15 years where it takes one mistake and then it derails kind of everything that I've worked for. So that's already like a big motivator for myself. But then the other thing is I've been confident I haven't wanted kids for so long. You can't shoot down the idea. Yes, I'm 18. Is my mind liable to change? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to? No, not in the slightest. But that's the one argument that no matter, how much I look into it, you can't shoot it down. And that's kind of where the idea of, frozen sperm comes in is I get this vasectomy. It eliminates the risk of me having a kid accidentally and derailing everything I've worked for. And it puts the power into my hands as to choose when I want to be a father, if I so choose in the future. So when I look at it, it's on one hand, I have the risk of accidentally making one mistake, in 15 plus years of my existence in college and whatnot. And then I have the very marginally reduced chance of not being able to have a kid in the future if I so choose, which again, I think is unlikely. But if not, I have frozen sperm, worst come to worst, I have the potential to do a vasectomy reversal, although I've considered it a permanent procedure. I don't intend on ever doing that. But the choice was very clear to me. Again, especially with overturning of Roe v. Wade, like I said, is there's always going to be that uncertainty. And so I'm putting the power in my hands. I'm not placing the reliance necessarily on the woman, with birth control. And yeah, I just want to make sure that no matter what, is that if I'm having a kid, it's on my terms. And I always think adoption is a viable option. I'd love to give another life, another chance to someone that may not have had that opportunity otherwise. So you stack all of those, and then you look at, okay, you get this vasectomy. Is frozen sperm slightly less effective? Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad we have people here that can kind of provide the statistics on that a little better than I can. But it's that slightly reduced chance of being able to have a kid in the future, which is already unlikely in my situation, versus having the power to choose when I want to be a father. So yeah, the choice was very clear for me, and I'm very glad it happened. I've had no regrets, haven't looked back at all. So yeah, that's my story.
Parker, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 1 sister.
And
I'm the youngest. Yes, my
young...
oldest brother does have a child, so I am an uncle already.
Okay. And how do your parents feel about this?
About me getting the vasectomy?
Yes.
They were very supportive, especially when you kind of throw in the idea of, frozen sperm definitely helped kind of sway that decision. So yeah, no, they were supportive, the entire way. And especially, again, like I kind of said, is just having the ability to freeze sperm. It absolutely helps sway everyone's mind, including my own, just because, you'll meet the love of your life and she'll want kids. How do you're going to lose her.
You will. You will.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I hear that all the time. And so even kind of talking to family friends, it's no, well, I have frozen sperm anyway. So even if that does happen, I'm okay. Like the contingency is always there. So now I have all the benefits, I feel like, without the risk.
Can I ask, Doug?
How did you... Okay. Go ahead, Guy.
No, it's like 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Number one is, have you tried out this line on women? Do the women dig it? Do they think it's an attractive thing that you do it? And hopefully your mother's paying the freezer bill. That's all I know.
So the women, yes, they do like it. I think it's a growing trend in my age almost I think the appeal of having kids is kind of declining to begin with. So most people are like, oh, like that's so cool. Like you kind of taking it into your own hands. Most people I've talked to, women, they want to be able to do it themselves, and it's much more difficult for them even. So there's almost jealousy, which is kind of an interesting thing that I would never have thought of. And then the freezer bill. I owe my dad a lot of money. I'll just say that.
Parker, how did you get to your vasectomy visit?
With my dad. He drove from, we live in Seminole, although I'm in Tampa for USF. And he drove to my apartment, picked me up, and we drove there together, and he was there the entire time.
And who witnessed your consent?
My dad. He was there the entire time. Yeah. I love him for it. He was very supportive.
Whose vasectomy I did shortly after you were born.
Yes. It's complete, full circle.
Okay. I might ask anybody who's watching this, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can go to one of the things below. I think it's chat. Open up your chat screen and you can submit questions to any of our speakers. So I'd like to sort of shift this over to the more scientific side of the program. Is Parker, are Parker and Guy realistic about this? What are the chances that stored sperm is going to be effective? For example, the question that I bring up is, if I'm 25 years old and I want to start a family at the age of 35, and what is my relative fertility chances of causing a vasectomy if I don't get a vasectomy and just have intercourse with my partner at the age of 35, versus if I get a vasectomy at the age of 25 after storing sperm? We wait 10 years. She doesn't have to use any contraceptives for those 10 years. And at 35, she undergoes use of my stored sperm. And we're going to learn a little bit about how stored sperm is used, whether it's used as intrauterine insemination or in vitro fertilization. But our scientific panel here is Marty Bastuba and Mel Cohen, who actually run a sperm cryo bank. And from the academic side, let's say from the ivory tower overseeing it all, is Real Smith Harrison, who is an assistant professor of urology at Virginia Commonwealth University. I think it's all Virginia. I think those are, is that right? They're synonyms, aren't they, Real?
Correct. Yep, you got it.
And so he's a Virginia boy who dates way back, undergraduate medical school and residency. Then he went out to Milwaukee for a fellowship in male reproductive medicine. So he's an expert on these matters. And I'd like him to listen from an academic standpoint, somewhat critically, to what our folks in the private sector have to say about sperm banking. Let's not paint an overly rosy picture of this unless it deserves a rosy picture. So if I could turn it over here to Marty or Mel, whoever has decided to go first at this, with the questions being, how is sperm stored? How effective is the storage process? And how effective is use of stored sperm? And what's Parker looking at for money here? I mean, how much is he paying per year to store? And how much is it going to cost to transfer that stored sperm back to his infertility doctor 10 years from now? And how much is he and his partner going to have to spend to use that stored sperm to get her pregnant? Marty Bastuba I'll have you introduce yourself, Marty, go ahead.
All right, Doug. Hey, thanks so much for allowing some members of my team to be here. And yeah, it's going to be me, Mel Cohen, who I don't see Mel's picture up there, but he'll be at least his voice. And also my lab director is sitting over my right shoulder. Aaron Bastuba. He's my nephew, but he's also a crack lab director, and he does it hands-on. So I wanted him to be involved so that we have very specific information if anyone has very specific questions. I'll try to keep moving along here. Already I could speak for probably 2 hours from just the topics that have already come up, and very enjoyable type stuff. I'm also a urologist. I did 6 years of general urology at Emory University, and it was there that I kind of fell in love with microsurgery and decided that I wanted to pursue that, and went to Boston University, where I did a fellowship in 1992. 93, then moved out to San Diego and started practicing urology, and always working towards doing more and more fertility. Over the years, I came across an opportunity to purchase a sperm bank. So I did that. So we also have a sperm bank. Maybe there's one other reproductive urologist that has a sperm bank. So that's something that's unique about us. We also have an andrology laboratory, and Mel will go through our overall setup. After about 20 years of wandering alone in the desert, Mal Cohen came into my life, who is a businessman extraordinaire, and really has brought many of the things we do to fruition from a business standpoint, the business of medicine, which allows you to treat many more patients in a more efficient way. And he'll go through sort of our overall setup there. And I think that the thing that I want to try to pursue as we're going through this today is, yes, it's not just freezing sperm, but how useful is that sperm? And Doug, as usual, you asked very incisive questions. That's the bottom line that I want to get to, is how useful is it, and how do we know it's useful? And the bottom line there is, well, I've been doing it for 30 years. And when we freeze, we do something called a test freeze, which is something that we can thaw out a few days later. And we see how the sperm wakes up, whether it's a week later, whether it's a year later, whether it's 10 years later. Pregnancies have been reported 40 years later. And so frozen sperm typically is a useful product. Eggs don't freeze that well unless it's a fairly young female, less than 30. The sperm freezes well. When us men get into our mid-60s, then there is more aneuploidy, and it is not quite as useful. Maybe there is a little bit higher congenital malformation rate and other problems. But in general, male sperm freezes very well. Young male sperm freezes extremely well. And we'll go through the options, but the 3 great options once one has a vasectomy would be vasectomy reversal, versus sperm retrieval for use with in vitro fertilization. Sperm retrieval we cannot use for intrauterine insemination, also known as IUI, or in guy talk, turkey baster technique. It's not useful for that. So it would require in vitro fertilization, and we'll give some information on that. The third option would be to combine a sperm retrieval with a vasectomy reversal. And I've done over 3,500 vasectomy reversals in the past 30 years. So it's a useful procedure. It's a successful procedure, but it has its expense, and many people don't feel comfortable with it. So we always feel, just like with chemotherapy, just like with various other options, it's much better to be proactive rather than reactive. And if we freeze ahead of time, I loved what we were hearing from Parker. I mean, that's right up my alley. That's what I believe. Just one more thing. My training was that you should refuse to do vasectomies on people 29 and younger. That was the feeling at Boston University at that time, from very caring, bright people. And it was not until really I had a sperm bank, I saw what freezing can do and had, very in-depth knowledge about that, that I don't worry about age anymore. It's not an issue because you are protecting people. And Parker, I commend you. You're taking responsibility. And it's not just you might make a mistake. The female might make a mistake. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she thought. Maybe she has ulterior motives. But all these things are taken care of by you being proactive. So I'm proud of you, and I think that that's very reasonable. At the end of the day, your sperm is going to be useful. Hopefully, just through very inexpensive IUI, but IVF would be there, and we keep getting better at it. So I think you'll be fine. So without further discussion on that, because we want to get to our program, Mel, are you there? Would you like to at least just say a few words about the overall setup of our operation?
So my name is Mel. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Fertility Center of California, as well as the Fertility Cryobank and the Fertility Center of California. We have developed a process where we're all inclusive to patients. And my background in business in both gynecology and now urology has helped us successfully grow this practice. And it could not be done without the lab, which is an integral part of our situation. And that is run by Aaron.
You want me to take it from here, Mel?
So Mel, could you just mention the different components of the business? There is male fertility specialists.
Sure. Male fertility specialist is our urology practice, but it also has about 80% of it performs infertility care, where we worry about male fertility and sexual medicine. The second company is called the Fertility Center of California, and it really has three different arms to it. The first and can have the capacity to store when it's appropriately required. The second division within that corporation is a tissue bank where we have male donors who want to provide sperm. We then do all the appropriate testing, store the sperm, and make it offered to everybody across the world, actually. The third division is a female fertility evaluation and services. So we evaluate women who may be having problems becoming pregnant, and we can treat up to, but not including IVF. For that, we refer out to the 13 or 14 different centers in our location in Southern California. And finally, we have a company called the Family Fertility Cryobank, and we store tissues, including sperm, eggs, embryos, testicular tissue, ovarian tissue, and stem cells from all over the world, including China, Germany, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and throughout the United States. We have lots and lots of tissues.
Great, Mel. Thank you so much. Also, I'd just like Aaron very briefly to introduce himself. He, again, does a lot of he oversees the day-to-day actual freezing, thawing, and how we actually take care of patients, and also shipping around the world. So any questions on that, we've got Aaron for. Aaron, would you just like to say a few words?
Sure. My name's Aaron. My uncle, Dr. Bastuba, brought me in 2007. When entering the practice, I knew nothing of cryopreservation. Our banking system, our accessioning, how we track tissues was all it was all on paper. There was no database. It was somewhat difficult to find the tissues when Dr. Bastuba first bought the practice. We've taken the paper trail and digitized it. We're now able to track the tissue through various sources, and that can be done even on my phone. When we started, we had approximately, I'd say, under 1,000 patients in our storage vault. Now we have over 20,000. So what Dr. Bastuba has said regarding Mel, taking this really from its infancy stage into right now a very healthy company is very true without Mel. Yeah, it wouldn't have been possible. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and so we've the point here is that we really have full service from start to finish. And so I think it puts us in a reasonable position to try to help people understand what actually happens, how people are treated. And with who was it? Our Guy, our author, was talking about McDonald's. We did a quick calculation, Guy, and maybe we'll have some sperm golden arches, but we have over 200 billion stored. So we're not serving, but well, I guess we're serving too, but we got over 200 billion sperm stored. So that is our talk there. All right, so we'd like to get started on slides. Well, let's get started here. So again, Doug, thank you so much for this opportunity, hopefully to share useful information for people. I'm humbled at the amount of knowledge here and talent. So let's just see what we can do. How do I advance?
You can just sit down.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, they're kind of in the way. Let's move that over there. There we go. All right, we got a few of these technical things. So our sperm storage policy, we, of course, discuss vasectomy, sperm storage at time of consultation. One thing we maybe do different is we actually have patients check off if they don't want to store sperm. And that's something you may want to consider putting on your consents. We actually have people, they sign up, no, I do not want to sign sperm. So we know it's front and center for all patients. I just think it's caring to do that. We especially encourage people to store if the patient has never had children and if they're under 25 with less than 2 children. And there is AUA data that suggests that 7 to 12% in that group, under 25, less than 2 children, 7 to 12% will request a reversal in 5 years. Now, we know that overall, about 5% of people who undergo vasectomy at some point in their life will consider that they want to have children again and may consider reversal or sperm retrieval, this sort of thing. But it's a higher level here, 7 to 12%, when we're in that 25, under 25, less than 2 children. So very important group, and why we're just a little bit more trying to get them to consider freezing. But of that group that want to do something, less than 50% proceed with a reversal or IVF. For me to do a vasectomy reversal, the cost is $8,100. That's all inclusive, surgeon facility fee, anesthesia, kind of all the things that it takes. And frankly, it could be $30,000, $40,000 in New York, from what I understand. I try to keep my prices down, but that's still pretty expensive for a number of people. In vitro fertilization, here in San Diego, where we are, it's anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000. If you're including pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidy and some of the bells and whistles. And I'm hearing now that some programs are even up to $40,000, especially if it's a female that is older, maybe in her early 40s, a lot more medication is required. So it's expensive stuff. Can we get rid of that? The cost, so that is a number one issue for many people. But if they had stored sperm, then IUI, for which we charge about $700, that's very approachable for most all people. And so this freezing of sperm, once someone has a vasectomy, we can't just get sperm from the testicle or even the epididymis and squirt it in a female's womb with any hope of her getting pregnant. That is for ejaculated sperm only. And so this is why it's so important to consider freezing prior to the vasectomy, not after the vasectomy. Why isn't that doing it? I did it. There we go. Okay. So in addition to the surgical vasectomy consent, we have patients sign the California state documentation. Wherever you're at, they probably have documentation you have to do, and a waiver that they have been encouraged to store sperm. Again, we actually have them sign off on that. This improved our storage rate on internal data from about 4%. And again, we're more I don't hate to say aggressive, but I think we're more caring, from about 4% up to 8.8%, which is, I think, a pretty good rate of storage. I still wish it was higher. I wish everybody would store, but 8.8% is where we're at. And I think that's much higher than the national average. Some data from Johns Hopkins was showing 0.8%. And so I think that's a pretty good rate of storage for what we're currently doing. Next. Okay, so the process for storage, we call it our freeze first campaign, or please freeze. We like to make it easy for people. They can collect either at home or in the office. We recommend 2 to 5 days of abstinence as being the best for getting the best sperm, but sometimes they're outside that range. And if the numbers are good, the numbers are good. We like them to hydrate well before collection. This generally gives them a little bit more volume. And then an appointment is scheduled so that they don't show up and be disappointed because they have to wait or a technician isn't available. Blood is drawn for infectious disease testing here in California. They're called the law labs. They must be done in California. And I think there's a few other states, maybe Florida. California has the most regulations, followed by New York and then generally Florida. But each state is different on that, and each country would be different on that. And then we would like them to give us at least 3 collections. And with that, and Aaron can speak very in depth on this if people have specific questions, to get ICI ready vials that can be washed for IUI. ICI stands for intracervical insemination. This is, kind of the true turkey baster, where someone might use a turkey baster and just actually squirt the sperm in the vagina near the cervix. The sperm still has to swim up. We have a slide on what IUI looks like coming up, I think, later. This is intrauterine insemination, but a lot of guys call that turkey baster technique. This is where a man ejaculates. We get the best sperm from it, and then a flexible plastic tube is used to go through the cervix into the uterus, the womb, and release the sperm when we know she is ovulating, so that we have the best sperm and we're putting it closer to the finish line. Then, so we like 3 IUI ready vials. And again, an ICI vial is less prepped. It can still be used for IUI, but it would take a little bit of prep to remove the prostaglandins so the female doesn't have uterine cramping. IUI vials can easily be used for in vitro fertilization, also known as IVF or test tube baby. And I believe we have a slide on that later. So that takes very, very low numbers of sperm. I've personally had couples that got pregnant with about a handful of sperm, maybe 6 sperm, and were able to pull off a pregnancy. That is not the recommendation, but it's just the point that very, very low numbers of sperm can create pregnancies, especially when you're working with a very good embryologist who can do intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where a single sperm is injected into the single egg cell. Okay, advance.
The next one's going to be the process for storage. You want me to take that?
Okay, here, I'd like Aaron to talk a little bit about process for storage, since again, this one of our excellent techs there that's just starting the process. Take it away, Aaron.
Yeah, so the concept of cryopreservation might be foreign to a lot of people, but it's a simple process as long as you have all the right materials, such as the thing with many things in life. So what happens with cryopreservation? Cryopreservation, simply, the patient collects the sample. We want that sample to be collected in our office. And the reason for that is we want that sample processed and actually put in the liquid nitrogen as soon as possible. Sperm begin to lose motility over time. So the sooner that we can freeze it, the better off we are. So we're going to go ahead and get that sample and confirm all the information on the collection container to ensure that it is the patient that the paperwork lines up with. We then allow the sample to liquefy for a few minutes, usually about 10 or 15 minutes. After liquefaction has taken place, we then start analyzing the sample. We first analyze the sample with our eyes, and we determine what the volume is, we determine what the pH is, viscosity, and whether it is liquefied or not completely. After that, we then take the sample and we put it on a specialized slide called a Mackler chamber. And what that chamber allows us to do is to gather the concentration of the sample and see how many motile sperm are actually in the sample. We need the amount of motile sperm before we're able to determine how many samples we can actually freeze for this patient on this particular collection date. So this is one of our techs. This is actually Matt. He's going ahead and he's putting a sample in the centrifuge where he will then pellet the sample. A lot of times if we have a high volume, we can't work with large volumes when we're cryopreserving. The vials that we use are really small. They only hold about a 1 milliliter of sample. And the samples that are being produced from the male might be, might have 7 or 8 milliliters in it sometimes. So we'll need to reduce the volume. So we go ahead and reduce the volume in the centrifuge. We acquire the pellet. We then prepare the sample for freezing. And all that we need to do to prepare the sample for freezing is to add a cryopreservative.
This is a cryo vial, just so people can see. It holds 1 ml. Sorry, Aaron.
So we add the cryopreservative into the vial or into the sample. We then add that mixture into the vial. Now the sample's ready for freezing. What do we need to do to freeze the sample? We essentially are just putting it in a liquid nitrogen vapor phase. That's going to bring the sample down to about -90 centigrade. And we keep it there for roughly 2 hours to 2 days. And after that time, we can just transfer it into the liquid phase, which is -196 centigrade. And that's where it stays until that sample is going to be pulled. Let's see. There's Matt. This is one of our cryo tanks, what we call our super tank. Each one of these boxes holds 100 1 ml vials. So 100 times 10, there's 1,000 samples in there. So that's kind of cool. This tank actually holds 6,000 samples. When we started off the business, we had 6 of these tanks. They're 35-liter tanks. Now we have over 50. So that's kind of cool, along with these larger tanks too. This is just explaining what we like to do with normal samples is we like to freeze at least 4 vials for the patient. Typically what I explain to patients is each vial is going to give you 1 attempt at pregnancy. So whether it's an IUI vial or an IVF vial, it's going to give you 1 attempt at IUI or IVF respectively. Whenever we freeze a sample, we always freeze a test freeze vial. That test freeze vial is going to give us a window into how the samples that remain thawed or remain frozen are going to thaw out. So let me kind of go over that one more time. So we have the sample that's produced, and let's just say we freeze 4 vials. For every time we freeze a sample, we always freeze a test freeze vial. So in actuality, we froze 5 vials. A few days after the sample's frozen, we go ahead and we take the test freeze vial and we thaw that vial. That gives us the insight into the other 4 vials that remain frozen. So how do we know how much motile sperm is going to be in the sample? Well, quite frankly, because we thawed a portion of the sample. And we just keep that data, and that way, when it comes time for the patient to use the vial, we know approximately how many motile sperm are in the vial. So that's kind of the trick. I don't know that other sperm banks do the test freeze. We've always done the test freeze because we want the patient to know how many motile sperm they have, because at the end of the day, that's what's important. How many motile sperm are present in the sample? This is the Fertivault, and I believe Mel was going to take over from this point.
So this is our storage facility that we utilize downstairs. We call it the Fertivault. The walls are about 3 feet thick. So if there was an earthquake or anything, it would be the best place for us to be. There is good electricity. We have no electrical needs for any of these mechanical tanks. We effectively fill them by hand and are maintained by hand for the entire staff. There is surveillance that goes on all the time in this particular facility. Next slide, please. We recommend for any of the vasectomists who are out there to utilize the Pronox system or a similar type of system. We offer it for nitrous oxide for our patients, and it lowers the anxiety of our patients greatly. It does bring in some additional income, but for the most part, it really truly lowers the anxiety of the patients, and it also helps the physician have less anxiety.
I agree with that.
Next slide. From our perspective, we start out with the first sample at being $108 for the storage, and this is fully complete costs. It includes bringing the materials into the office, doing all the blood testing for infectious diseases, processing them, a complete comprehensive sperm analysis, the cryopreservation of freezing, and 1 year of storage. Most patients, we ask them to do 2 or 3 additional samples, and for each additional sample, you're looking at about $270 to complete the service, and they get added, and it's part of the storage, so they get that storage of 1 year at that point in time. So if a patient has an average of about 3 samples pre-vasectomy, you're looking at about $1,350 for the cost for doing that process. Then people ask us after that, what would be the costs? At our particular program, we charge $425 for a full year of storage, regardless if they have 1 sample or 1,000 samples. And we also include that as family. So if the wife has eggs and the husband has sperm, it's all one price at $425. But as you can see, we've got a 5-year plan at $1,500. So that works out to about $300 a year if they want to prepay for 5 years. And we have just introduced a brand new program called the Forever Plan, where we will store indefinitely over 5-year periods of time with contact every 5 years. We understand that some people have religious concerns about the eventual destruction of tissues, and this is a method by which they can use to satisfy their religious conscience. We also want to make sure that people understand that we store, but for any of the oncology programs in Southern California, where we discount the prices by about 20%. And we also, Dr. Bastuba has extended this to the military for anyone who's being deployed, extended. We have other things like financial plans, and even to the fact with hardship cases, we have oncology patients, we will never turn them down. We will store them free of charge if necessary. Doc, did you want to bring this up?
Sure. Okay, back to pregnancy rates. Oh, and by the way, one thing from Aaron's part, for that test freeze, that is a small aliquot. That is maybe 5 to 10% of the volume of that specimen. We're trying not to lose much of the specimen. Oftentimes it can be much less than that, depending on how much sperm is there. So we're not losing much on that test freeze, but we gain the knowledge, the certainty of how it's going to thaw. And we feel that that's very valuable. Okay, pregnancy rates. What are the female's chances of getting pregnant by intercourse alone per month with no male or female factors? At age 20, it's about 20% per month. At age 30, it's about 15% per month. At age 35, it's about 6%. At age 40, it's less than 1%. Now, I will throw in a pitch for my wife. She was 42 last time we got pregnant, but on average, it's pretty darn unlikely once a female is into her 40s. And that plays out in reproductive technologies for our next slide.
Oh, there we go. I was wondering if those were going to come up. There they are. Okay.
And so those numbers from the last slide, probably not as high as you thought, but that's what the numbers are. So here we have artificial reproductive technologies, and a female in the 20 age group with natural intercourse, we're back to 20%. And this is per month, per cycle here. With cervical insemination, 20%, because it's basically the same. IUI is at 30%, IVF 75%. Even IVF, even in a 20-year-old, it's not 100%. And we know that the fertility rate in the general population is about 85% for just normal couples trying to have a baby, all comers. And so, you know, it's never 100% the fertility rate for any given population. By age 30, the NI natural intercourse has come down to 15%, ICI same, IUI is at 22%, IVF at 62%. By 35, with natural intercourse, we're getting 6% a month, ICI same, IUI 9%. Is the data, although our data is better at our particular program, and IVF at 43%. Over 40, even lower, significantly lower, 1%, as we discussed previously with natural intercourse. The ICI is at 1%, IUI is down to 1% also, although I think our internal data is higher than that, Aaron. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But that's the data we're able to get from the web, and IVF at 20%, which actually that sounds high to me, 20%, but that's what we were getting off the web. So our numbers, in-house performance, yeah, here we go, 9.4 per cycle. That's the US average. For us, we're at 15.7% versus that 9.4%. For our FCC patients, that's Fertility Center of California, that's all comers. Now we can compare that to a typical, ostensibly very fertile same-sex female couple who, you know, should have no fertility problems, or at least we're not expecting that. They purchase sperm, let's say from our sperm bank, they're at about 40% per cycle. So it's significantly higher, but they're not having any fertility issues. The IUIs typically are done on couples. They've been trying for a year or more. They're not getting pregnant, so they come to us. Now they're looking for evaluation. And so, of course, that's going to be a lower rate. Next slide. Okay. These were some questions that we had previously, I think, from Dr. Stein, that we'll just sort of go through to hopefully get some chat questions going on. What is the maximum time from collection of sperm to freezing? Again, we have various ways of doing it. As Arian pointed out, we like in-office collection when it's available, and we like to do that within the hour. That gives us the optimal results, but we have developed cryo kits where people can do things at home and can ship it to us, and so those are always same day delivery, and Aaron can go further into that, and probably Mel too, but the goal is to try to get them to us sooner rather than later. Next slide. Does one company do a better job than others? Well, my feeling is I think we do as good a job as possible, because it's what we do. Because of the test freeze thaws, we know the quality of what we have. And so that to me is very comforting, and I believe it's very comforting to our patients. There are many other places out there, some big ones, and I don't want to badmouth them. I don't know what they do. I know what we do. I don't believe they have anywhere near the background, the knowledge of what it actually takes to get a couple pregnant. That's why I wanted to go through all the things we offer, all the aspects of our operation. It's why, and I don't know, we've got Dr. Smith Harrison. I don't know if he knows of another urologist that does what I do and what we've created here. It's a rare thing, but it gives us the absolute confidence that we know what we're doing because we've been doing it for 30 years and we know what it takes. We work with all the IVF programs. So just like there are some quarterbacks that are better than others, there are some soccer players that are better than others. I know what we can do. I'm not sure what other people do. And I know it because I've been working with IVF labs directly and I see the results of what we have, and we do our own insemination. So we see the results of our product. And so there's a confidence there. And when you're searching out a program, we obviously don't freeze for everyone. We may not freeze for anyone on this conference right now. But when you're trying to find a program, ask them, what are your results? Do you know what your results of your frozen sperm are? Do you do a test freeze? Do you do a test freeze thaw? So we know how it's going to wake up 5 years from now, 10 years from now. These are reasonable questions to ask. And I think they're important questions as to actual outcomes, not just, yes, I've sent something to you, you've charged me, and you've frozen it. What was the quality going in? That's going to determine the quality coming out. If it's great quality going in, it should be very good to maybe great quality coming out. They need to prove that to you. And they need to, by showing what their data is, what are they able to do with those specimens? So I would say that I think is hopefully useful to people. And that can be anywhere in the world. There's many good labs. Most all IVF labs have excellent people in their labs called embryologists. They're typically quite adept at freezing, thawing. They are the ones that do the intracytoplasmic sperm injection where you're injecting sperm in. These are high complexity lab people, generally with a lot of experience, and they're quite adept. And so that would be a good place if you're looking for somewhere to start freezing. Now, that's not how they make their money. They make their money doing IVF. And it may be that you have to go to a couple, 3 IVF programs before you find one that's interested in freezing because it's kind of a sideline for them. So is IUI. That's not how they make their money. We do IUI with the only goal of making it work as best as is possible. I don't do IVF. I don't have that hammer. When you're a reproductive endocrinologist, that's a very powerful hammer. And so they're less worried about making IUIs work. For us, this is the only thing we do. We don't do IVF. So we go the extra mile to try to make IUIs work. Next slide. Okay, how are specimens stored? I think Mel went through this and Aaron went through this. Aaron was saying it's very cool. Yeah, it's extremely cool at -196. We took over a area that had been used for radiation. And so it's got these insanely thick concrete walls with a vault door on it. And we tested it 3 different times to make sure there was no radiation left in the place before we took it over. But, it's all very monitored. And also, which I don't know, Mel, but Mel set this up. Each of those specimens, I believe, has a $10,000 policy on it. Is it Lloyd's of London? It's something like that. We have an insurance policy that each of those specimens is insured should catastrophe happen, should a problem occur. There is an insurance policy for them, and we do not depend on the electrical grid because we use liquid nitrogen. That one tank, the tallest tank in the middle there with a hose hanging from it, that's how the liquid nitrogen comes into us. And our techs are checking those tanks. What is it, Aaron, every other day? Or
We check them every day.
Every day.
Every other day.
The tanks are checked every day. It's possible for a tank to get a crack. We've never had that happen, but it is possible. We have ways of checking for that. If they're starting to have sweat forming on the outside, then that's maybe a clue that there could be an issue. So we monitor things very closely because we do not, and we try not to load all of one specimen in any one area so that we have another fail-safe plan there. And I would say, again, I don't want this to be some sales thing that we're the only people that can do this. I would say that most all sperm banks, legit sperm banks, are doing most, if not all of these things that they're monitoring. But you may want to ask them, how are things stored? How are they monitored? How safe are these specimens? And so I think those are very legitimate questions. How long can sperm be stored? Israeli reported use after 41 years of long-term storage. That's an unusual patient, but and I don't know that whole story, but that at least gives us some feedback there. We've used specimens, 20 years out?
I've thawed samples out from the early 80s just because they opted to destroy their samples. So I went ahead and we thawed it out as they instructed, just took a peek at it, and sure enough, there's sperm still swimming around. I think the important thing here, I don't know if we've broached this question yet, how long can you store sperm? Sperm really can be stored indefinitely. We store it at cryo temperatures, and what I explain to patients is this. The temperatures are so cold that the hands of father time cease to move. So all molecular motion just ceases, and that's what allows these sperm to be used years and years into the future, because the sperm just stop moving. Once you thaw it out, that's when the sperm begins. So their biological clock just stops and starts up again once the sample's thawed.
And as we mentioned earlier, it's limited by the initial quality, quality in, quality out. And that's why we work so hard on making sure that we have adequate quality up front, because that's what's going to determine what you can do later on. And Parker, hopefully some of this information is useful to you, and you may have some questions that you may want to ask your sperm storage facility. Hopefully that's going to be very comforting to you, because I bet you're going to get reasonable answers. Okay, where can we ship frozen sperm? Aaron, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so we transport ourselves through the use of UPS all throughout the continental United States. It's a very simple process. We always choose next day air, and the sample gets there as long as there's no huge natural disasters the following day. And if there is a huge natural disaster, it might take 2 or 3 days, of which the sample's still going to be safe because we ship it in these very secure cryo containers. When it comes to transporting outside the United States, we use very reputable companies that specialize in international shipping. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to ship internationally, but it is not a simple process. And I don't recommend anyone not familiar with the process to embark on it.
What's the cost on that, Aaron? What does it cost to ship to Australia?
For shipping, if someone is going to ship to Australia, typically a shipping company is going to charge, I would say, between $3,500 and $5,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's doable, but it's got some price to it. We don't ship into war zones, and each country has its own policy.
Very unique policies.
Are there a lot of countries we just can't ship to?
The only one.
Can we ship to China?
Yes. You can ship to, I think the only country right now is Pakistan, and just, I believe, political turmoil, that sort of thing. But all the other countries, as far as I know, we're able to ship.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, there may be countries we can't ship to, but that we're not forbidden to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next slide. That was the first one. Okay, so here's hopefully a useful slide of IUI. Most people are probably familiar with this, but again, this is time for natural cycle IUI, which is standard IUI. This is time to when the female is ovulating, which is typically about the middle of her cycle. Day 1 of her cycle is the first day of flow. This isn't just a little spotting, this is actual flow. So on your left, that is day 1. And if that is day one, then, and if she has about a 28-day cycle before her next day one, then about day 14 or so should be about when ovulation is occurring. And that's when we want to time those ovulations. Sometimes we'll do it day 14 and day 15, two inseminations. Oftentimes we'll just do it one of those days. Now, sperm in the female that is in estrus, she's ovulating, her whole body changes. The pH of the fallopian tubes change, the sugar content changes, the cervical os usually has thick mucus on it, but at time of ovulation, that mucus becomes thin, it becomes sperm friendly instead of sperm hostile. And so her whole body changes. And frankly, one of the medias we use very often with sperm is called HTF, human tubal fluid. It's just simply mimicking the fluid in the fallopian tubes of a female that is ovulating. So the man then gives his specimen, it's spun down, the sperm pellet is removed, the supernatant, the top fluid on the top, is discarded, and that sperm is then we add the fluid to it, resuspended, thank you, resuspended in HTF to a low volume. It's typically about a cc or so, because the uterus, even though it seems like it would have some volume, it's typically potential space, not actual space. And so we don't want a large amount of fluid. And if you see on that left side, we're moving that soft plastic tube deep into the womb and then releasing, so that we've got the best sperm and we're trying to put them closer to the finish line. In guy talk, the way I describe it is, we're changing the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon, where anyone can be involved in it, into the Olympic Marathon. The San Diego Marathon, a lot of those poor runners, they're blocking better runners. They're in their way. They can't run their race. Well, by getting the best sperm out of the specimen, we are now making it the Olympic runners. These are the barefoot guys, the guys that are coming down from the mountains. They are all superb runners. Nobody's in anyone's way. And then what we do is we change that race from a marathon into a 10K by releasing the sperm a lot closer to the finish line, which is the egg, which is in the fallopian tube. On that left-hand side, you can see an egg there. Maybe it's out by the fimbriae, the opening of that fallopian tube near the ovary. Sperm still have a lot of work to do. They got to swim that fallopian tube. They got to get to the egg. They got to bore through the shell. They got to fertilize. They've got a lot of things to do. So there's still a selection process going on, but we're getting their best and we're putting it closer to the end zone there, to the success area. Next. IVF, what is that? Well, typically a female will have one ripe egg each month. That is under the direction of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. With IVF, a female who may have 10 eggs, I like to call them ladies in waiting. They're sort of there. They're 90% of the way ripe, but they need FSH to get the rest of the way. Well, you can do natural IVF, and that was originally what was done, but it's very inefficient. And many years ago they realized that if you give enough FSH, you can ripen up that whole cadre of eggs that were ready to go, that are what we would call antral follicles that are ready to fire. And so they get a lot of FSH. It's expensive, and it's one of the reasons why IVF is so expensive. They're given FSH to ripen up, let's say, that whole group of 10 eggs. Those eggs are then removed from the female, so they are no longer in vivo in life. They are now in vitro, which means they're in glass. They're outside the body in a glass petri dish. Now, each cell can be lifted up by a very experienced embryologist. As you see on the lower right hand, that's a little suction tube that's holding that egg cell. And with another pipette that's sharpened, they can pierce through the eggshell and release a single sperm into each egg. That is called ICSI, ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Fertilization rate, if the egg is healthy and the sperm is healthy, is about 70% in a well-run program. Could be higher if you've got a 20-year-old, but in general, we're looking for a 70% fertilization rate. So of those 10 cells that were injected, 10 eggs that were injected, maybe 7 fertilized. They are then nurtured in the laboratory, generally for about 6 days now. By that time, they've formed a blastocyst, or known as a blast. Those embryos can then be transferred into a female. Typically along that process, some fell by the wayside. Maybe we're down to 4 blasts there. They can do PGTA, pre-implantation genetic testing, for aneuploidy on them. They will find out, is there Down syndrome? Is there this or that? And that can help the reproductive endocrinologist to decide what embryo would be transferred. They also find out sex, by the way. Let's say they had 4 embryos, they transfer 1. That's SET, or single embryo transfer. That is the standard now by most well-run programs. Those other 3 are frozen and could be transferred even years later to try, hopefully, that they would implant into the uterine wall and become a pregnancy. So that's the overlook there. We talked about pregnancy rates previously. Overall, the last data I saw from SART, this is the society that oversees IVF worldwide. It's around 42%, I think, is the take-home baby rate from one IVF cycle. So it's not 100% effective, but it's highly effective. And for younger females, it's generally more in the 70% range if they're less than 30 years of age and have good fertility. Next slide. Okay, guys, I tried to sprint through that as quickly as I could. I absolutely apologize to whoever is translating, because I think that was probably impossible, but maybe, who knows? And I do apologize, but I wanted to try to get, there's so much information here. I could go on for hours, and maybe we will if there's questions. And Dr. Smith-Harrison, if I got anything wrong, please feel free to correct me. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, at least for starts. We'd love to field questions. Maybe let's make that smaller, or we can look at the chat. Wow, I see on chat there's 63 questions. Doug, I don't know how to run the chat real well.
Yeah, so
you don't have to. I'd like to turn it over to Real. Yeah. I'd like him to comment as the leading expert here on sort of an overview of what you have had to say. He's familiar with the systems in Milwaukee and in Virginia, so maybe a little bit of a quick comparison there. And I'd like Real to pick the questions and pose them himself, and to pick the questions from the audience, which he and you can address.
Sure.
Hey, Doug, can I just jump in really quick? I wanted to, that was fantastic information, everybody. Just a really quick thing is because it's getting, we went longer, which is great, but for people who are leaving, we're going to put up an evaluation form for the event, which we need to put in and send to Laval University. So we really appreciate if people could fill that out. Tati is going to post it on the chat next to where the questions have been posted. So please look through that, and if everybody could fill that out. And then I'm obliged, but happy to ask if, we're always hoping for donations. We don't have really any major sources. All these things are free. If anybody can donate anything, a monthly, a one time, whatever, it really helps to keep us going, keep all this work happening. But we're very excited by today's event. Obviously, everybody has 63 questions. That is the record. What we tend to do is we take all the questions at the end, and we'll make sure either get them in writing, we'll get them put as the list together, make sure any question not answered, we will make sure it gets answered and be posted on the website. All of the lectures from the past are, except for one that we screwed up on, but all the lectures are on the World Vasectomy Day website. But anyhow, thanks all. I'm going to send it back to Real, and you guys keep going from here. I just wanted to make sure, because I know some people, it's getting late in some parts of the world here. So I'm going to pass it on to Real.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. And Marty, Mel, Aaron, great presentation. Definitely covered a lot of territory. And yeah, agree with the vast majority of what you said, if not everything. Doug, kind of to your point in terms of kind of what I've seen in Virginia and Wisconsin in terms of just setups. Granted, this is also coming from an academic perspective, right? So training, fellowship, and now provider in the academic setting. I've been lucky in the past two places I've been, there has been joint andrology and REI participation in the same lab and same space, which is actually a really nice setup where both male and female or yes, couples, partners are seen in literally the same office building. So a lot of obviously collaboration, and we can kind of tailor things a little bit easier to each couple. In terms of kind of the storage of sperm, Wisconsin and here at VCU, if tissue is going to be used in more of an immediate sense, we store it locally just to kind of defray all of those travel shipping costs. But if they're just storing for long-term use, we typically send it to basically a central warehouse. I think it's somewhere in Indiana. And basically they handle whoever's freezing it, then just works directly with the larger kind of warehouse freezing company. I do know a couple years ago, to Marty's point about how they're not electricity dependent for their storage, there was a storage facility that did lose electricity, and there was a massive loss of frozen tissue. So definitely something to ask if you are going to freeze. What is their what's their setup? What are the safeguards? They said they had safeguards and alarms, but none of them went off. So that's a massive risk, and this is pretty precious stuff. Loss of resource. At UVA, so they didn't really have REIs, so it was the andrologists, the urology folks working with a private group in town. As a resident, I would drive across town with sperm in my armpit to keep it warm after retrievals to take to the private REI folks. So each setup can be a little bit different, and details matter. In terms of, I guess now, Doug, anything else that I missed in terms of your questions?
Anyway, I guess the ultimate question is, if Parker had not had a vasectomy and tried to get his partner, the girl of his dreams, pregnant 10 years from now, is he just as likely to get her pregnant with his stored sperm and use of stored sperm 10 years from now, having had a vasectomy?
Yeah. So always a complicating factor is whoever his partner is, right? So just in terms of giving statistics, that's going to be really difficult. And also the other major question is, how far are they willing to go to get pregnant, right? Cost, invasiveness, etc. If her barrier is stopping at IUI, then if you just look at broad numbers, then her odds of success are going to be lower, right? So it's the main questions are, what are the female factor in terms of success, and how far are they willing to go, if she is happy to do IVF and ICSI, then her odds are very, very good. Assuming that, Parker's young, assuming that he has adequate sample, which Marty talked about, that on the male side, the quality of that frozen specimen is also a major factor. But assuming all is well there, then should be pretty good. I had one question for Marty and Aaron. Do y'all have any data for the percentage of guys who bank prior to vasectomy, percentage of use following that? How many guys are coming back to you and saying, hey, yeah, I have a vasectomy, but now let's use this stuff?
I don't know that number offhand. Aaron, do you have any feel for it?
Either.
As we would expect, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
Because it takes people a while. I'm assuming that you do vas reversals like I do, and shoot, it's not unusual for a guy to be 10, 15, 20 years out.
I've done 30 out, yes.
From his vasectomy. Oftentimes it followed a stormy divorce, and it takes them a while to recover emotionally, to trust, to love again in that way. So I think that's more of a long-term project. Great question, but I don't have data on that. And I would also throw out for our young guy there. The IVF for some and some insurances is covered nowadays, and it's becoming more common. So I threw out a figure, 20 to 35,000. That's unfortunately real, and I suspect it's similar on the East Coast. But sometimes it's covered, and it's getting more commonly covered. So that with that, I would say, yeah, that's you should have just as good of opportunity to get pregnant. And I could even make a case that maybe it's better in the sense that, let's say your partner is 35 years of age and you create embryos at 35 and you have a child then. Now she's 40 and her eggs are no longer firing, but you have frozen embryos. You could still transfer a frozen embryo at age 40, 45. Her uterus is likely still good to carry. And so it can actually extend the fertility options for couples with females who are a little bit older.
Totally agree there on the insurance and cost side of things. I am seeing a slow increase on improved coverage for fertility care. Sometimes it's they'll pick one thing and not another. I don't know if this policy is still the case. We had a few folks in Wisconsin where apparently if you worked for Starbucks for 6 months, you had coverage for IVF. So they would go get a job at Starbucks for 6 months. So their IVF was covered. So some folks will proactively seek out jobs specifically for coverage.
How reasonable is Guy Shepherd's recommendation that everybody store sperm and then get a vasectomy?
I think it has absolute merit. I mean, I don't know about everybody. No, one size never fits all. But I really think there's so much merit to it. Roe versus Wade or not, I think it's a caring thing to do. I mean, we have many famous people, important people that want to freeze from a paternity standpoint. But I think also just from a loving, humanistic, caring standpoint, freezing and then not creating unwanted children, at least at that time in life, but having that control of being able to have children later in life. I think it's hard to find a huge flaw in that.
Yeah, I think it should certainly be on the table in that discussion had. As urologist, I don't know how, if you are a urologist that does a vasectomy but doesn't often dabble in the fertility side of things, the let's try and have a kid andrology world, I don't know how often that pre-banking conversations are being had in general, which I think is fairly unfortunate. With my younger guys, I definitely have that conversation. And as Parker alluded to prior, you very much might change your mind later on, so you need to be cognizant of that. And the AUA data supports that as well. Marty, I did have another kind of question just in terms of your banking experience. Yes. What percentage of youngish guys fail to ever follow up with you and pay, and you just have to make the decision to basically axe their helicopter above, get rid of their tissue? Do you have a significant dropout rate?
I think Mel and Aaron can probably answer that better. And I guess Mel, there was some problem with your transmission there a little bit earlier.
Am I on better now?
Yeah, I don't think we ever destroy until we contact. We just keep maintaining. We have people that we've maintained for, maybe I shouldn't say this, maybe I'll get in trouble, but we have people we maintain because to lose that tissue is, it's irreplaceable. Aaron, what do we have?
From a business perspective, our abandonment rate of any tissues is less than 1%, which if you look at the national banks, it's closer to about 30%. Okay. It's all based on processes that we've done with skip tracing the patients and other things, but we won't destroy until we know every little thing that's going on. And unfortunately, one of the handles that we have, a hammer that we have, is a collection agency that will put it on their record. And as long as they get disposition paperwork back to us, even after 4 or 5 years, we'll still take care of them the way they want them. But we've got tools that we use to make sure that the abandonment rate stays very, very low.
Yeah, great. So yeah, I was under the impression that, yeah, nationally more like 30%. And I've had guys who they forgot to make a payment. They come back for a year later and it's gone. So it's, and again, those are kind of the larger kind of industrial warehouse freezing setups.
Yeah, that's sad to hear. I know that's just not the way it's just such a precious resource that we have a triple fail-safe. Even after we have somebody says they want their tissues destroyed, it still takes us probably in the 6-month range before we will destroy it, just because we've had instances. And, and we try to be very, very cautious about destroying those tissues.
I have a quick question. It's like, what's the quality level? Is it best for a young man? I know men can produce sperm, till to the end, but is it best you have best samples by having a younger harvest?
Hey, Doug, I want to jump in there.
Please do.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So let's say violently. My name is Matt, and I own a small company in Montreal where we do a lot of cell biology research on sperm cells. The answer to the last question you just asked is any gamete that is produced either by a female or a man will be better quality the younger the person's going to be. So oocytes will basically drop down in quality over time, and semen quality drops down over time as well. I mean, as a man ages, there are several parameters that change, and not all men are equal. Some men, for instance, will maintain very good sperm concentration all through their lives, but DNA quality in sperm cells will drop. Other men will have very high counts of sperm cells, but very poor DNA quality all through their life. You see all the possible, all the possibilities are there in nature. And so when you freeze semen, you have to take that into account. So in the case of Parker, freezing his semen at the age he was probably the best bet. If there was a time to freeze his sperm, that was probably the best time, because his semen's never going to be better than when he's between 17 and 22 years old, roughly. And this is just statistics, right? He might maintain a very high semen quality all the way through maybe 35 years old, where GH drops down, cortisol cycles are all over the place, and then testosterone mimics it, and you can't sleep as well anymore. And, the whole game of aging comes in. But yeah, so there is the difference. Freezing earlier is always better. It's better for oocytes, it's better for spermatozoa as well. So that's one thing. I wanted to come back on a question that you've raised, Doug, which was, I'm trying to reformulate the way you've done it, but a lot of the questioning was, how is freezing really affecting sperm cells? And, is Parker ending up with the same chances of conception by freezing after a vasectomy when compared to a situation where he would have been not vasectomized? So what really happens to sperm cells during freezing is not really that complicated to understand. What is affected is not the DNA inside. Actually, DNA is better under minus 80 degrees for some reason. It's just the structure of the molecule that's like that. You know that because, lichen grows in the Arctic, right? So it's frozen, but every now and then temperature allows it to grow and DNA pops back up in its action and cells divide and flowers appear and stuff like that, right? So DNA doesn't really suffer from freezing. It's actually in a better state when it's frozen than just being submitted to all this other metabolic stuff happening around it. So you don't need to worry about, generating, illness in children and stuff like that by freezing sperm cells. It doesn't work that way. The way sperm cells are really hammered by the freezing process is by the formation of ice crystals the concentration of salts that are increasing outside of the sperm cell affect the signaling, and it really messes up how the sperm prepares to fertilize. So what happens is that if, let's say, I'm going to give you a little bit of literature on the bovine side because there's been a lot of research on this species, but it translates pretty well in the human. If you want to have comparable fertility in a frozen dose of artificial insemination in the bovine, fresh versus frozen, you basically need to put 10 times more sperm cells into the artificial insemination dose when compared to a fresh one. So by freezing, you're basically killing half the sperm cells most of the time. But the ones who wake up have less fertilizing power. This is compensated by the IUI or the IVF, but the fertilizing power of those sperm cells is not the same anymore. But with assisted reproductive techniques, you can make up for it quite a bit. In humans, fertility rates are approximately 25% for the most fertile couples. And if you use donor sperm, semen that's coming from guys who have particularly good semen quality, after thawing, if you use this sperm, you will reach scores in IUI that will be just a little bit under 20% per cycle. So, fertility in human being like 25% per cycle in the most fertile cases, you drop down with using donor semen to just a little bit under 20%. So you would assume that your clients who have frozen sperm prior to vasectomy, in good cases like your patient here, Parker, he's probably going to be in the range of 15% per cycle, which is not that bad when you think of it. But is he going to be at the level of what he would have been trying to conceive at 25 or 30 with his partner? Probably not, statistically, like purely statistically speaking. But so that matches up a little bit what Real was saying. So that covers what I had to bring to the table for now.
When I spoke with Real a night or two ago, he used the expression paradigm shift. We had a paradigm shift here where we change our websites to describe vasectomy as either permanent contraception or as when coupled with sperm storage, effective long-term contraception, that we shouldn't, our websites are full of, oh, this can't be reversed and make very sure and all. Should we add a little page to our websites that say sperm vasectomy is a good temporary form of contraception as long as it's coupled with sperm storage?
I mean, I'm not in your profession, Doug, but I think that if you did that, I think you could transform really the practice of vasectomy and its role in men's health. I think right now, to the degree that women are pushing men into your office, I think you have a better solution now with this two-step process to give them an answer. And I just like, what if? I think you guys could be a rising tide that kind of lifts men's health, but it's like, I think there's a real opportunity to do this. And I think that now that there's market solutions that are readily available, and we have our poster boy in Parker, I think we're ready to go public and at scale.
I would say, Doug, I made that transition, a decade ago, but that's just doing what I do and knowing what I know. And between reversals, sperm retrieval for IVF, and the freezing, I've seen it as a temporary form for a long time now. But I like what you're saying.
Well, the paradox is that at least in John and my practice is that we encourage all young men with fewer than 2 children to store sperm. John, I don't know, maybe it's 10% will actually store sperm, and a lot of them are convinced that they're never going to use it. They just want to say they have stored sperm to placate their moms who thinks they're doing a crazy thing by getting a vasectomy too soon. So they go through the list on our website of different companies who are involved, and they might get to Fertility Center of California and say $803. There's this other one here called Legacy or whatever, and they'll do the whole thing for $325. I'm going to go with the cheap shot because I'm never going to use it anyway. So whether they use a good preservative or a not so good preservative, I'm not going to use it. I just want to be able to say I did it. I'm not sure how to handle that situation. Parker, what are your thoughts on that? How did you choose your company? Did you just choose the cheapest company you could find?
Okay, so it's funny you mentioned that. I did go with Legacy, funny enough. No, so that was probably one of the most time consuming, well, apart from actually getting the vasectomy, which wasn't easy to begin with. That took over a year. Finding out what company to go with and what was best for me took a lot of time and a lot of research. And I actually met with the CEO of Legacy eventually, which it was partially by chance, but I was able to talk with him, and he gave me a lot of good insight. Well, CEO, buys toward his own company. I'm not oblivious to that, but I heard a lot of kind of their processes and how they go about things that eased my mind, I guess. But then obviously there is always that risk, especially since I did it at home, shipped with the preservative. So yeah, there was a lot of hesitation almost. But then, I learned about, the semen analysis that, they performed to kind of see, one of the biggest things, I guess, that eased my mind. Semen analysis was big. The freeze and then thaw, they did that as well. And then if any of it was deemed unfit, it came in poorly, it didn't ship properly, anything like that. And the analysis kind of revealed that I could redo the entire process, or worst come to worst, they'll refund it and then I can go to that in-person clinic. So yes, it took a lot of time, even reading anecdotes and all that before I settled on a company, but I'm confident and comfortable with my decision.
You sound more like a guy who anticipates having a family at some time in the future, rather than a guy who's absolutely convinced that children aren't going to be part of his future. In other words, you really researched it rather than just going to the lowball company and saying, let me just do that because I know I'm never going to use this stuff. I'm just doing it to placate my parents.
So I can't, obviously I kind of stand by, I don't plan on having my own children ever, but I'm still not oblivious, and I can't shoot down the argument. You'll change your mind, you'll meet the love of your life, right? And I kind of mentioned this earlier. So I wanted to make sure that, I got this at 18, so I know that I'm young and I'm the exception here. And so I wanted to make sure that every step that I can control is, to the best standard, and that I'm not going to have any regret in the future, and that I have that peace of mind, I have that contingency should anything ever change, even if I don't anticipate it. We saw the rates earlier, is people can say they'll never want kids and that, or, this or that. You can't guarantee that. I'm aware of that. And so that's kind of, yeah, you're right, is I wanted to make sure, should anything ever change, that, I'm in good hands and that, I have the options available to me. And that's why I have 8 vials frozen. And so, yeah, I feel comfortable that should my mind ever change, even though I don't anticipate it, and, adoption, which, is also a heavy factor with my decision. Should I ever want kids of my own, I'm comfortable that, I can make that happen.
Parker, you're
I had a question. I was wondering from a marketing perspective, the idea that that the quality of sperm of younger people is better than the older people, and a lot of people, people get having children older. I would think from a marketing perspective, that would be very appealing, sort of to freeze sperm young. Just you'll have it even if even if you're 50 years old, you've got that young sperm. That's going to be, if that's better quality, that seems appealing. I would wonder if that helps marketing.
Jonathan, if that's a tack we were going to take, we could maybe take a cue from the female fertility world, because it's a huge issue with females freezing eggs. Eggs are much harder to freeze than sperm. And so we could sort of stand on the shoulders of the egg freezing people and see what they've done to try to motivate people in that world is becoming much more common. And I like your thought process, and that we might learn some lessons from them.
Plus,
and
while
what
you're
they've
at it, you may want to consider hiring Parker as your spokesperson for that. He sounds like he would be the best spokesperson I can imagine. But also, another person I really want to acknowledge is Katy Cordova. She's in Colombia right now. She put this together. Thank you, Katy, for all of the hard work. It takes a lot. We really appreciate it. Awesome job again. And everything went really well today. I'm going to keep going. But yeah, I would, if I were starting a sperm bank, I'd call Parker up and say, hey, you want to be my spokesperson?
I appreciate it.
Well, we've gone about 2 hours, and we'd normally describe this as a 1-hour undertaking here with options to go a little bit longer. We've had some really provocative questions here. Real, would it make any sense for us to take maybe 3 more questions and then wrap it up, and then assume that the rest of the questions may be answered online?
Sure, I think very reasonable. One question that I think popped up a little bit earlier, I've never had experience with this, is so obviously we know after a vasectomy you're not immediately sterile, correct? As I tell my guys, you got to flush the tubes out. Have you ever had guys come back almost as an oopsie and said, hey, I know I have a short period of time, but can we try and bank whatever's left in the tubes? That was a question posited earlier.
Yeah, we have had them, and I try to tell them to get the very first ejaculation that they can.
Mhm.
But so I don't know. I paint this picture of with each ejaculation, you're probably dumping 90% of your supply.
Mhm.
So try to catch the very first one. Marty, does that make sense?
So we're actually doing a study right now on just that. And unfortunately, I can't give you any hard data, but at least for a couple of weeks following the vasectomy, we're getting reasonable numbers of sperm. And so, but again, the higher sperm counts you start with, what we're doing is we're checking sperm counts before the vasectomy and then at intervals following the vasectomy. It's never been done. It's never been looked at to see, how fast the sperm fades. And so we actually have a study going on right now. We also started, through Mel's direction, we started our own IRB. So we have that study, and we will have data on that, hopefully over the next 6 months, something like that.
You use the time, a couple of weeks, but that's going to be a big difference if the guy's been ejaculating every other day for a couple of weeks and now he's at day 14 versus if his first ejaculation is at day 14.
That is true. That's part of the study, controlling ejaculation frequency.
And there is one question. Do y'all see any contraindications to doing this? Banking prior?
You mean prior to vasectomy?
Correct. Yep.
There was one thing that I thought of that I don't know that this is really a contraindication, but for someone like Parker, I can say that, having been married, having 3 children, the idea, the intimacy that is generated when you have decided with your mate to have sex for the true procreation, that is a very, very intimate and special time in a relationship. I know at least it was for me. And you're missing that. But I think the greater good is still there, that how many unwanted pregnancies did you prevent, and all the pain and all the suffering and the change in life and such. So I think the greater good is still with it, but that was something that came to mind trying to think of a negative.
Marty, after an intrauterine insemination, do you ask the female to abstain? Maybe they can go out to a nice hotel the night of their IUI and celebrate.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to abstain.
Okay, well, there you go. There's your celebratory post IUI.
I like it.
And it said that the female response contributes to fertility. So,
Okay.
maybe it would even enhance IUI fertilization rates. Who knows?
I may start promoting that, whether it's a same-sex couple or not. I think that all makes sense. Good idea.
One more
hello.
question, Real.
Hello, Douglas.
Did someone have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to just ask something. I'm called Dr. Kiza. I'm a doctor from Uganda. I wanted to inquire if you have any future plans, or you already have structures that you're planning to extend this wonderful technology, coming through Africa, because I'm sure very many people would benefit, given that Africa has one of the rapid population growths, and having such options coming on table would really make many people come in, to take up vasectomy as a method. Do you have anything like that, or any plans of having it extending all the way to Africa? Thank you.
Real or Marty, do you have perspective in the international availability of sperm storage?
Well, I know we ship. I think we need specimens for us. We do same day shipping. I don't know that would be possible. There are some large European sperm banks. That would take some legwork to try to figure out what might be available in your area. I guess the first question would be something we already touched on, would be, are there IVF programs in the area? The nearest IVF program is your nearest likely place to freeze. So that would be where I would start. I mean, the European sperm bank is huge, but that's more, it's in Europe, Northern Europe, Sweden. So I don't know that would be useful. But I'd start with IVF centers.
But if I could just say one thing, it seems like there's an opportunity, because one of the things that Jonathan mentioned at the beginning is that there's low uptake rates in Africa. Now, if you actually brought in this thing, I think, if I'm hearing correctly, maybe that could actually shut a door that would allow for at least a greater receptivity and uptake, because they would see this as not something that's permanent and gets in the way of nature, but something that is forward thinking and actually complements probably their ethical concerns that they bring into it.
Dr. Keeson, he could do it. He could be the sperm bank hero of East Africa there and set up his own sperm bank. Maybe come over and learn from Dr. Vestuba's lab and set something up, and you could have you could be the nucleus of sperm storage in East Africa.
We would be delighted. The invitation is there.
This would be awesome. I'm flattered, because what I've been seeing, I've done some research when it comes to this technology, and I've seen that we have IVF centers, but what they do, they can only store the sperms temporarily. I don't think they can even exceed more than 96 hours. Some even go all the way to 72, not longer than 72. So coining the idea of having sperms, stored for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, or even who knows, even up to 10 or 40 years, that would be something great.
Hey, if you're able to send us information either through Dr. Stein or somewhere, we'll reach out to you. We'd love to work with you on that project. That would be exciting. See if we can help in any way. I'd very much enjoy that.
Yeah, my website is vasweb.com, and there's a contact us page. I'll put you in touch with any of the participants in this presentation or forum. It's been fantastic for me. My goal was to learn more, and I certainly did. So, Marty and Real, I thank you for the professional side of it, and Matthew Boilard also. That was a really good interjection of some important information. And Parker and Guy for sort of the social aspect of it, and maybe it'll all come together one day, and vasectomy will be that new paradigm shift that Real mentioned, and maybe people will start using vasectomy as with sperm storage as long-term temporary contraception. Jonathan, any final words?
No, just saying it is always amazing how you guys go on and on and on, and there's always more questions. What we'll do is we take the questions on the side, and then we put them into one pile of questions, and then we'll, if they haven't been answered, Doug, we'll either get them from, Marty, if you're willing to look at some of the questions and answer the ones we haven't been able to, or any of the other speakers, that would be great. And really just thank everybody. And Doug, thank you for, this is a great example of putting your curiosity answered in a big way. And I guess that holds true for everybody out there. Anybody who has a topic that really, something that really is important to you and relevant to your own interests and needs, this is a great forum to bring together those experts and to answer those questions collectively and to build that community.
Jonathan, our next lecture series is when? June?
June 18th, I think. June 17th.
Have we picked
Yeah.
a time?
It's good. It's June. Hold on, I'll tell you. It's June 17th. So June
And we haven't
17th. We'll
chosen a
send
topic
out.
yet.
But what happens is Doug, Michelle, and Eskar get together and they brainstorm the topics. I think we actually had a few topics, but I'm going to write a letter to everybody in the Vasectomy network to anybody topic, any pressing issue they want to cover. We're really open for it. And especially anybody who wants to be a presenter or a moderator would be great, just to bring in more diverse ideas and people and questions would be fantastic. I think we did great. Anyhow, excellent, great job, everybody. Thank you again. Please fill out the evaluation form. It's just something they ask of us. And again, the donation thing, if that's possible, I don't want to stress it, but it is helpful. And we're putting out the, link on the side there as well. Doug, thank you again. Thanks, everybody. I think we've made an hour. We stretched an hour.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really
All the
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.